A young woman and her dog disappear into Yosemite's vast wilderness. Swallowed by a storm, everyone thought they were lost forever. But 5 years later, a ranger unseals a forgotten chimney and uncovers a chilling truth that changes everything. Hey, don't forget to like. Please subscribe for more shocking crime stories and hit the bell icon. The darkest truth are yet to come. Imagine standing alone at the edge of a trail in Yosemite National Park, the granite peaks looming like silent sentinels, the wind whispering through ancient pines. You're miles from help, your phone useless, and the sky is darkening with a storm. Now imagine you never come back. That's what happened to 29-year-old Mara Ellis in the autumn of 2017. She was an experienced hiker, a woman who knew the wilderness like the back of her hand, yet she vanished without a trace. For 5 years, her fiancé, Daniel Pierce, clung to hope, refusing to believe she was gone. I first came across Mara's story in a faded online forum post, a desperate plea from Daniel that stuck with me, haunting me late at night when the world feels too quiet. Her disappearance wasn't just a mystery, it was a wound that refused to heal, a question that gnawed at everyone who loved her. How could someone so capable simply vanish? Mara Ellis wasn't the kind of person who got lost. She'd been hiking Yosemite's trails since she was a teenager. Her love for the outdoors, rooted in childhood summers, spent camping with her father, a park ranger who taught her how to read a map before she could read a book. By 2017, she was a seasoned backcountry explorer, her backpack always packed with the essentials: a satellite phone, a first aid kit, a lightweight tent, and her trusted companion, a German shepherd named Kodiak. Mara and Daniel, both in their late 20s, were planning a life together. They'd just bought a small cabin in Mariposa, a stone's throw from Yosemite's entrance, dreaming of a future filled with adventure. But Mara had a ritual. She'd take solo trips into the park to clear her mind, to find the kind of peace only the wilderness could offer. "It's where I find myself," she told Daniel before she left that September, kissing him goodbye as Kodiak wagged his tail, his red collar bright against his dark fur. On September 9th, 2017, Mara set out for a 3-day loop through a remote section of Yosemite's backcountry, a challenging route that wound through Tuolumne Meadows and up toward the jagged peaks of the Sierra Nevada. She'd planned every detail, sharing her itinerary with Daniel: campsites, check-in times, the works. Her satellite phone was programmed to send a signal every evening, a simple "I'm okay" to ease Daniel's mind. The first night, the message came through right on schedule, a little blip of reassurance from the wilderness. But on the second night, September 10th, the signal never came. Daniel waited, staring at his phone, telling himself it was a glitch, a dead battery, anything but the worst. By the third day, with no word, his stomach churned with dread. He called the park rangers, his voice tight with panic. "She's never late," he told them. "Something's wrong." Yosemite's rangers didn't waste time. Mara's experience in the park's unforgiving terrain, steep cliffs, dense forests, and unpredictable weather, demanded immediate action. By dawn on September 11th, a search and rescue operation was underway, one of the largest in the park's recent history. Helicopters buzzed over the granite peaks, their thermal imaging scanning for any sign of life. On the ground, teams of rangers, volunteers, and K-9 units scoured the trails, combing through thickets and scrambling down ravines. Daniel was there, hiking alongside them, his eyes bloodshot but unyielding, calling Mara's name into the vast silence. He described her gear to the rangers: a neon yellow rain jacket, a navy backpack, and Kodiak's unmistakable red collar with a silver tag. He showed them a photo he had taken just weeks before, a candid shot of Mara laughing, her dark hair tied back, Kodiak's head resting on her knee as they sat by an alpine lake. It was a snapshot of joy, of a woman who belonged to the wild. The search was relentless, but the wilderness gave nothing back. No footprints, no dropped gear, no sign of Mara or Kodiak. The rangers noted the weather. A brutal storm had swept through on September 10th, bringing torrential rain and near-freezing temperatures. The theory emerged quickly: Mara, caught in the storm, might have been swept away by a flash flood or succumbed to hypothermia. The Tuolumne River, swollen and raging, became the focal point. Divers braved its icy currents, searching for any trace of her neon jacket or Kodiak's collar. But the river, like the mountains, was silent. If you've ever stood by a raging river, the kind that roars like it's alive, you know how it can swallow everything, hope included. Would you keep searching or let the silence win? For Daniel, giving up wasn't an option. Weeks passed, then months. The search scaled back as winter blanketed Yosemite in snow, making the trails impassable. The official report listed Mara as presumed deceased, likely drowned in the river. But Daniel refused to accept it. She knew that river, he told anyone who'd listen. She'd never cross it in a storm. She was smarter than that. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd lost everything but couldn't let go. The case went cold, Mara's name fading into the park's long list of unsolved mysteries. For 5 years, Daniel lived in limbo, haunted by the image of Mara's smile in that photo, the life they'd planned slipping further away with each passing day. Fast forward to June 2022. Deep in Yosemite's backcountry, miles from the nearest trailhead, a ranger named Ethan Caldwell was on a routine inspection. The Park Service had been clearing out old, dilapidated cabins, wooden relics from the early 20th century, scattered across the wilderness for hikers and rangers to use in emergencies. Most were crumbling, their roofs sagging, their chimneys clogged with decades of debris. Ethan's job was simple: check each cabin, clear out any hazards, and mark them for demolition before the summer fire season. It was tedious work, the kind that makes you feel small against the vastness of the park. Ethan, a third-generation ranger, had grown up in Yosemite's shadow. He knew its trails, its dangers, and its secrets, or so he thought. On June 14th, Ethan reached a cabin tucked in a secluded clearing, surrounded by towering pines and granite outcrops. The structure was weathered, its logs grayed by time, the door hanging off its hinges. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the floor littered with pine needles and mouse droppings. Ethan swept his flashlight across the room, checking corners, peering into the shadows. Everything seemed ordinary until he reached the chimney. It was sealed shut, a rusted iron plate bolted over the opening. Odd, he thought. Most cabins left their chimneys open to vent smoke. The bolts were tight, the rust suggesting years of neglect. Ethan grabbed a crowbar from his truck. His curiosity piqued. He climbed onto the roof, the wood creaking under his boots, and began prying at the plate. The iron groaned, then gave way with a screech that echoed through the clearing. A faint, sour smell hit him, dry, like old leather and decay. Ethan peered into the dark shaft, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. What he saw froze him in place. Wedged inside, about 6 feet down, was the mummified body of a large dog, its fur faded to a sickly gray, its paws braced against the brick as if it had been clawing for freedom. The dog's head was tilted up, its jaw locked in a silent scream, teeth bared in a grimace of agony. Ethan stumbled back, his heart hammering. This wasn't a natural death. No animal crawls into a chimney and seals it shut. Someone had done this. Someone cruel. Ethan radioed his supervisor, his voice shaky. "I found something in a cabin chimney. It's a dog. It's bad." The discovery halted the demolition. Rangers and local sheriff's deputies descended on the cabin, treating it as a potential crime scene. The dog's remains were carefully extracted, a grim process that required dismantling part of the chimney. The body was intact, preserved by the dry, sealed environment. At the veterinary lab, the necropsy painted a horrifying picture. The Bayern, a German shepherd, based on its size, had died from smoke inhalation and burns. Soot coated its lungs and its lower body showed signs of heat damage. It had been alive, trapped in the chimney, as a fire roared below. The cruelty was deliberate, sadistic. But who was the dog, and why was it here, in a cabin miles from Mara's planned route? The investigators scanned for a microchip, hoping to identify the animal. The scan beeped. A hit. The chip registered to a German shepherd named Kodiak, owned by Mara Ellis. The realization hit like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just a case of animal cruelty, it was a breakthrough in a 5-year-old missing person case. Mara hadn't drowned. She'd made it to this cabin, far from where the search had focused. The discovery of Kodiak's body shattered the river theory, raising new questions. If Kodiak was here, where was Mara? What had happened in this cabin? And who was responsible for such a horrific act? The cabin became the epicenter of a renewed investigation. Daniel Pierce was called in, his face pale as he confirmed Kodiak's identity from photos of the red collar, now missing. "That's him," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Where's Mara?" The Rangers searched the cabin again, this time as a crime scene. They found no logbook. Public cabins often had them for visitors to sign, but this one was gone, possibly removed to hide who'd been there. The absence felt intentional, like someone covering their tracks. Then, in a dusty corner near the fireplace, a ranger spotted something, a faint scratch on the floorboard, barely noticeable. Prying it up revealed a hidden compartment. Inside was a single item, a neon yellow rain jacket, folded tightly, caked in dirt. It was Mara's. The jacket's discovery confirmed Mara had been in the cabin, but its placement, hidden not discarded, suggested someone had tried to erase her presence. The investigators' minds raced. Had Mara sought shelter from the storm, only to meet someone, or something, far worse than the wilderness? The dog's death pointed to a deliberate act, not an accident. The team scoured the cabin for more clues, using luminol to check for blood. But years of foot traffic from hikers and hunters had contaminated the scene. The surrounding woods were searched for a grave, but the terrain was vast, the task daunting. The jacket and Kodiak's body were the only tangible links to Mara, and they screamed foul play. As the investigation deepened, a chilling detail emerged. The fireplace where Kodiak had suffered held a secret. A forensic technician examining the hearth noticed faint carvings on the underside of the mantel, geometric shapes, precise and unnatural, hidden from casual view. They weren't random graffiti, they were deliberate, almost ritualistic. The patterns didn't match any known symbols, but their precision suggested intent, a signature left by someone with a purpose. The carvings sent a shiver through the team. This wasn't just a crime, it felt like something darker, something planned. What kind of person carves symbols in a remote cabin? And what did they do to Mara? I've walked Yosemite's trails myself, felt the weight of its silence. There's something about being out there alone that makes you trust the world a little less. When I read about Mara's case, I couldn't shake the image of her in that cabin, thinking she was safe. If you were there, hearing a stranger's footsteps in the dark, would you stay or run? The carvings were a clue, a whisper from the past, but they weren't enough. 5 years after Mara vanished, the cabin held one final secret, buried deeper than anyone expected, that would lead investigators to a truth too horrific to imagine. The discovery of the cryptic carvings beneath the mantelpiece in that remote Yosemite cabin turned Mara Ellis's disappearance from a tragic accident into something far more sinister. 5 years after she vanished in September 2017, the mummified remains of her German shepherd, Kodiak, found trapped in a sealed chimney, and her neon yellow rain jacket hidden under a floorboard, pointed to a deliberate act of cruelty. The carvings, geometric, precise, and unsettling, weren't random vandalism. They were a signature, a clue to a mind capable of unthinkable acts. Investigators now faced a chilling question. Who had been in that cabin with Mara, and what had they done to her? The serene beauty of Yosemite's granite peaks and whispering pines hid a darkness that was only beginning to unravel. The carvings became the investigation's focal point. Their intricate patterns didn't match any known symbols. No indigenous markings, no gang tags, nothing in the FBI's databases. Experts in occult symbolism were brought in, their faces grim as they studied the photos. "These are personal," one specialist said, her voice low. "They're not from any established group. This is someone's private language, maybe a ritual." The word ritual hung heavy in the air, conjuring images of something far beyond a typical crime. The investigators digitized the carvings, running them through every possible database. But the results were dead ends. The symbols were unique, a puzzle with no key. But they weren't giving up. If these carvings were a signature, they might appear elsewhere, on a weapon, a piece of jewelry, a hidden shrine. The cabin itself was a forensic nightmare. As a public use shelter, it had seen countless visitors, hikers, hunters, drifters, over the 5 years since Mara's disappearance. Footprints, fingerprints, and DNA were layered like sediment, impossible to untangle. The missing logbook, which should have recorded visitors' names, was a glaring red flag. Someone had removed it, likely to erase their presence. The team expanded their search, combing the surrounding woods for anything. A discarded item, a shallow grave. Ground-penetrating radar swept the clearing, but the rocky terrain mocked their efforts. Still, the jacket and Kodiak's remains confirmed Mara had been here, and the carvings suggested someone else had been too, someone who didn't want to be found. Investigators shifted focus to the carving's craftsmanship. The precision suggested skill, maybe someone who worked with their hands. They circulated images of the symbols to local artisans, wood carvers, jewelers, even tattoo artists, hoping for a match. Weeks passed with no leads, the case teetering on the edge of going cold again. Then, in late July 2022, a call came from a silversmith named Clara Hensley, who ran a small shop in Oakhurst near Yosemite's southern gate. "I've seen that pattern," she said, her voice hesitant over the phone. "It's not something you forget." Clara explained that in early 2017, she'd been commissioned to craft a set of custom silver pendants for a client. The design matched the carvings exactly, sharp angles, interlocking shapes, almost hypnotic in their complexity. She'd kept sketches and receipts, standard practice for her bespoke work. Clara's records pointed to a man named Silas Morrow, a reclusive artist who lived on a sprawling property in the Sierra foothills, about 30 miles from the cabin. Silas, in his late 40s, was known in Oakhurst for his eccentricities. Rarely seen in town, always paying in cash, his property gated and guarded by no trespassing signs. The pendants, Clara recalled, were part of a larger order for a private retreat he was building. He was particular, she said, and wanted every detail perfect, like it meant something deep to him. The investigators' pulses quickened. Silas had no criminal record, no connection to Mara, but his property's proximity to the cabin and the matching symbols were too coincidental to ignore. They pulled his hunting licenses. Sure enough, he'd held permits for the Yosemite backcountry in 2017, including the area near the cabin during the September storm. A search warrant was issued for Silas Morrow's property. The team approached at dawn on August 3, 2022, their vehicles crawling up the winding dirt road to his isolated estate. The entrance was marked by a wrought iron gate, etched with the same geometric patterns as the cabin's carvings. The sight sent a chill through the team. This was no coincidence. The property was a fortress. High fences, dense woods, and security cameras perched like watchful eyes. Silas, a lean man with sharp features and graying hair, answered the door calmly, his eyes unreadable. "I've been expecting you," he said, his voice smooth, almost rehearsed. His composure unnerved the officers, but they took him into custody without resistance, his hands steady as they cuffed him. The search of Silas's property was methodical, every outbuilding and corner scrutinized. The main house was sparse, almost monastic, with bare walls and minimal furniture. But a locked shed hidden behind a grove of oaks told a different story. Inside, investigators found a shrine-like setup, a wooden altar carved with the same geometric symbols, candles burned to stubs, and a collection of animal bones arranged in precise patterns. The air was thick with the scent of wax and decay. A locked metal box, bolted to the floor, held another shock. Mara's satellite phone, its battery long dead but its case unmistakable, engraved with her initials. The discovery tied Silas directly to Mara's disappearance, but the question remained, where was she? The shed's contents painted a disturbing picture. Notebooks filled with sketches of the symbols, interspersed with rambling passages about purification and offerings, suggested Silas followed a personal, almost cult-like belief system. The animal bones hinted at ritualistic sacrifices, but there was no human DNA, at least not yet. The investigators pressed deeper, searching the property's 50 acres. Cadaver dogs were brought in, their noses low to the ground as they swept the forested edges. Hours into the search, one dog alerted near a rocky outcrop, a secluded spot hidden by brush. Excavation began, the team working in tense silence. At 3 feet down, they found her. Mara Ellis's remains, wrapped in a tarp, her hiking boots still laced, her navy backpack buried beside her. The discovery was a gut punch. Daniel Pierce was called to the station, his face crumpling as the sheriff confirmed Mara's identity through dental records. "She was right there," he whispered, tears streaming. All this time, the autopsy revealed Mara had died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely instantaneous. Her body showed no signs of a struggle, suggesting she'd been caught off guard. The tarpon burial site indicated planning, not panic. Silas had hidden her body with care, ensuring it stayed hidden for 5 years. But what about Kodiak? The dog's horrific death in the chimney pointed to a cruelty beyond murder, a need to inflict suffering. In interrogation, Silas Mara was a paradox, calm yet evasive, his answers cryptic. "The wilderness demands balance," he said when asked about the symbols. "Some things must be cleansed." Detectives pushed harder, presenting the satellite phone, the carvings, the bones. They theorized Kodiak's death was retaliation. The dog had likely attacked Silas to protect Mara, enraging him. Silas's eyes flickered when they mentioned Kodiak, his hand brushing his left leg. The detective noticed. "Show us," he demanded. Silas hesitated, then lifted his pant leg, revealing faded scars, deep, jagged marks consistent with a dog bite. The scars were old, from 2017, a silent confession etched into his skin. Faced with the mounting evidence, Silas broke. His confession was chilling, delivered in a flat tone that made the room feel colder. In September 2017, he'd been in the cabin, seeking shelter from the storm. Mara and Kodiak arrived hours later, soaked and exhausted. She was friendly, trusting, sharing the small space as the rain pounded outside. Silas saw her as an opportunity, a gift for his rituals, which he believed purified the land through sacrifice. As Mara slept, he struck her with a heavy iron poker from the fireplace, killing her instantly. Kodiak lunged, biting his leg, nearly overpowering him. Furious, Silas dragged the dog to the fireplace, forcing it into the chimney as he lit a fire below. "It had to suffer," he said, his voice devoid of remorse. He sealed the chimney, trapping Kodiak in a torturous death. Silas admitted to hiding Mara's body, first stashing her backpack and phone to erase her presence. He burned the logbook, ensuring no record of their encounter. Days later, he transported her body to his property, burying it deep in the woods. The satellite phone, a trophy of his control, he kept locked away. The carvings, he explained, were his mark of balance, a ritualistic signature he left at every site of his offerings. Investigators pressed for other victims, but Silas insisted Mara was the only human sacrifice. The animal bones suggested otherwise, but no other human remains were found, leaving a lingering unease. The legal process was swift. Silas Morrow pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated animal cruelty, avoiding a trial in exchange for a life sentence without parole. The courtroom was packed, Daniel Pierce sitting in the front row, his hands clenched as the judge read the sentence. The evidence, the phone, the carvings, the scars, and Mara's remains was overwhelming. Silas's property was searched again, but no further links to other crimes surfaced. His ritualistic beliefs, while disturbing, seemed confined to his isolated world, a darkness that thrived in Yosemite's shadows. I've thought about Mara a lot since I first read that forum post. Standing in a quiet forest, it's easy to feel safe, to think the world is kind. But what if the real danger isn't the cliffs or the rivers, but the person sharing your fire? If you met someone like Silas, would you see the warning signs, or would you trust them like Mara did? I stumbled across Silas's name in an old local article about Yosemite's eccentric residents, years before his arrest. Back then, he was just a quirky artist, not a monster. It's strange how the truth hides in plain sight. The case closed, but it left scars. Daniel moved away from Mariposa, unable to face the mountains that took Mara. The cabin was demolished, its chimney reduced to rubble, but the story lingers in Yosemite's lore, a reminder that even the most beautiful places can hide horrors. For the Rangers, it was a lesson in vigilance. For the community, a wound that never fully healed. Mara's life, so full of promise, was stolen not by the wilderness, but by a man who twisted its beauty into something profane. Mara Ellis went into Yosemite to find peace, but found a darkness no one could have foreseen. It makes you wonder, how many other secrets are buried in the places we think are safe? Well, have you ever heard of a case like this? Comment your thoughts. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.